Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this 22nd day of July 2022. Well, it's a very, very cold and cloudy day right here in Brisbane. Well, it's just starting to drizzle a little bit, and as I look out to the horizon, which is normally very clear, it's very, very grey today. The temperature at the moment is 15 degrees, and it's going to be this way most of the weekend by the looks of it. Well, it's not a very, bright-looking weekend. A little bit of a gloomy weather out there, but there's lots happening out in the weekend. So, if you're going out and about, make sure that you are dressed appropriately because of the weather, and make sure you take your brolly, have it handy as well. Well, right now, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to the news section today. And first of all, we'd like to congratulate Srimati Draupadi Murmu for becoming the 15th President of India, coming from a tribal background. What an amazing thing to have happened, and the whole world is waking up to this amazing news, words of congratulations coming from all around the world, especially people of the indigenous background, and women as well are very, very happy with this move. We will look at that report later on, but right now, our local news. First of all, what's going to happen with unvaccinated Victorians? Here's that report.
As COVID infections increase across Victoria, new mortality data shows the important role vaccines are playing in preventing deaths. The data, provided to the ABC by the Health Department, is drawn from 2,171 deaths in Victoria over the first 6 months of this year. Unvaccinated Victorians make up about 4% of the total population, a much smaller number than people with 1 or 2 doses or those with 3 or more. Yet the department data reveals unvaccinated people make up a much higher proportion of deaths, more than a third. Those with 1 or 2 doses are also overrepresented in mortality rates, while the much larger population who'd had 3 doses or more accounts for far fewer deaths.
The protection from the vaccines is still good, if not very good, to stop you going to hospital, to stop you dying from COVID.
Victoria has recorded 149 COVID deaths in the past week, up from 87 the previous week. The number of people in hospital dipped slightly today to 875, down from 906 yesterday. There are 46 people in ICU.
You are, ladies and gentlemen, up to date on the news. Well, right now we're going to go across some of the states. First of all, we've had a look at Victoria. Right now, let's go to Western Australia.
Kicking goals and selling this weekend's Festival of Football is WA's next step beyond COVID.
People are travelling to the city from interstate and from abroad, filling up our hotels, filling up our cafes, filling up our bars.
At the same time, the Deputy Premier is encouraging mask wearing and reminding West Australians vaccination remains important.
That's the reason why we've been so successful at managing the COVID pandemic.
For kids aged 5 to 11, WA has one of the lowest double-dose vaccination rates. Less than half have had 2 doses. It's still above the national average of 40%, but far behind places like the ACT, where nearly 3/4 are double vaccinated. Experts say part of WA's lag might be down to how COVID has spread here. While many adults managed to get vaccinated before the virus entered the state, kids weren't as lucky, with the virus running rampant for most of the time they've been eligible. In the past 3 months, 27% of the WA population have had COVID, many of them children, and have had to wait 3 months before getting another vaccine. That could also be driving WA's low 4th dose vaccination rate. But it comes with a warning: infection isn't the end of the story.
The strongest protection against reinfection with COVID-19 is having had both vaccinations and having been exposed to the disease itself and having had the infection.
It's just very important to build that immunity level to come back and get that second dose. And yes, you've got to wait that time after you've had COVID-19 as an infection, but the pandemic is not over.
And for those on the fence, GPs have a clear message.
If you do have any concerns, come in and have a chat with us. We can discuss through this.
An offer doctors hope many, young and old, will now take up. Kian Burke, ABC News.
But that debate about the mask is heating up a little bit. Some people are for it, some people don't like it at all.
Many Canberrans are now masking up to head to the shops.
I think it's our social responsibility to not enhance the cases. I mean, it seems to be the first point of protection.
Though there are mixed opinions on whether mask wearing should be compulsory.
Not anymore, it's too late. The floodgates are open.
Should be compulsory, do you think?
I think so.
How about you, sir? What do you think?
Well, I think so. It depends where you are, where situations.
It's the variability of those situations that the Chief Minister argues would make a broader mask mandate confusing and counterintuitive given the current low levels of COVID-19 control measures.
Requiring people to wear a mask in a supermarket but not in a nightclub sets a range of quite obvious anomalies, and people would rightly say, well, the risk in each of those scenarios is different.
Masks are currently mandatory in the ACT for household contacts of COVID-19 cases over the age of 12 in indoor settings other than the home, as well as for commuters on public transport and for staff and visitors in high-risk settings like hospitals and aged care facilities. But the ACT branch of the Australian Medical Association says a wider mandate is now necessary.
People have this perception that you've got to have a connection to policing and fines. That's not the case at the moment with the mask mandates in places like hospitals. We don't get fines, we don't get policed. We should expect people to wear masks in those areas. I'm calling for the same for the rest of the ACT.
When it comes to expert opinion, the Chief Minister insists he's been listening.
The advice is that we could be living with this for the rest of our lives. So I think we've got to step up as a community and be a little bit more mature and not just expect that government will tell you everything that you must do.
Canberrans are strongly encouraged to continue wearing a mask when entering a public indoor setting. Harry Frost, ABC News, Canberra.
Canberra right now, let's go to Northern Territory.
It's been a tragic week in the Northern Territory, including the deaths of a man, a woman and a baby in a Central Australian homeland, an alleged domestic violence incident that's caused local heartbreak, but no national outcry.
To be frank, if this was a white woman and her child in the Eastern Seaboard, this would have been front page news. It wasn't. So if it's a race-based issue, then let's call it as it is.
Authorities have not confirmed if the man was the perpetrator, but have described the deaths as horrific. Now the Minister wants her federal government colleagues to step up and fund violence prevention services and programs based on the Territory's huge need, not its small population.
If you're a woman in the Northern Territory, you're 6 times more likely to be murdered in a domestic family and sexual violence situation than you are anywhere else in Australia. That tells you straight away that that's our need.
Regina Bennett has been running this women's shelter in Darwin for 20 years. Most of the families using her service are from the Territory's remote communities.
I've seen it over the years and the situation, instead of getting better, it seems to be getting worse, and we all need to work together in how are we going to fix this problem.
She's got funding for one counsellor, part of the Minister's latest $6 million grants announcement. But it's not enough, with her service turning away several families a week.
We know we have a huge area in the Northern Territory, remote communities, and we need to go and look back out there and what their needs are.
And despite the recent grants, men's services are struggling too.
There's huge gaps in services. When we talk about men, there's not enough men's places on communities where men can go and do programs, and where visiting counsellors or social workers can come out and run programs once a month with people. They need that. Same with the women's shelters need that.
The Minister says she'll be asking for an extra $8 million a year from the federal government at a meeting in Adelaide this week. Felicity James.
So there you go, more funding for a very, very just cause, and I think it is needed. we can spend money elsewhere. Why can't we be looking after this kind of welfare of our citizens there? Well, right now also the maternity support, that also faces a bit of challenge.
This is not your typical midwifery clinic. Yoga classes are just one of the many services available at this privately run centre in Kensington. And new parent Roisin McNanny is a big fan. With no family in Australia, Roisin and her baby have relied heavily on the support of the clinic that's called Midwives and Mothers Australia.
It's just been like having a big hug from your own mum coming in here and being able to use the services and get help and advice whenever it's needed.
But after 11 years operating out of this local government-owned building, it's been told it may need to move out. Melbourne City Council says the service no longer meets community needs.
We've looked heavily into their guidelines and what they want to do for the area, and it's exactly what we're doing.
The council says a free maternal and child health centre nearby offers similar services.
I feel like they're very different to what's being offered here. It's much more holistic and family orientated.
We have the midwifery perspective as well, where we're also caring for the mother, we're caring for the partner and the family dyad, as well as the newborn baby.
Mama is the first and one of the few midwifery clinics here in Melbourne, but they also provide a range of other services, both before and after birth, including physiotherapy, mental health support and yoga classes.
Coming through the middle. People can walk in and out here without having appointments. They can come and weigh babies, they can come and have a sit and a cry.
The service has also been helping Melbourne's major hospitals during COVID, receiving more than 151 referrals this year alone. With just enough money to pay for rent and staff, the founders say the service could close if they lose the building.
We came into this building as midwives, not as businesswomen, and to this day we still are midwives and we haven't made enough to do this all again.
The ABC has contacted Melbourne City Council for comment. Mahnoz Anguri, ABC News.
There you go. There's another section that is needing a lot of help as well. And the other one is mothers still suffering from long-term effect of the traumatic birth experience, which ties in with that previous report.
Going to do all the cards around that first. But how will we all push them around? Okay, we need to push ones up your pack.
I don't run with them. I don't do a lot of, I guess, the physical rough housing, but that's what Dad's for.
Let's go to the rescue. Meow, meow, meow.
Amy Madropoulos isn't as active with her boys as she'd like to be. She's living with invisible injuries that require meticulous management.
My life is not spontaneous by any means anymore. Everything is planned around my bowel habits and my pain thresholds. If I didn't have this photo, I probably wouldn't remember.
Amy suffered severe physical injuries after a difficult birth with her first son.
So that's immediately after we had Bob. I was covered in blood and there was blood everywhere. It was quite a long, lengthy, painful labour, over 20 hours. So they tried the vacuum 6 times and then that failed, so massive episiotomy and then forceps delivery. In terms of pain, I've never experienced anything like it in my life.
In the weeks and months after Bobby was born, Amy...
So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Right now, we'll go overseas before we go to our daily India report. Joe Biden has tested positive to COVID.
Well, we're told, James, that he's experiencing mild symptoms that many people would be familiar with by now: a runny nose, an occasional dry cough and fatigue. Now, as you mentioned, he is 79 years old, so his age is considered a risk factor, but he is fully vaccinated, double boosted, and has also started taking the Paxlovid antiviral treatment. So both the White House and the President himself, in a video that he released on Twitter earlier today, really trying to reassure Americans that he is still carrying out his full duties from isolation and is feeling fine.
Hey folks, guess you heard this morning I tested positive for COVID, but I've been double vaccinated, double boosted, symptoms are mild, and I really appreciate your inquiries and your concerns. But I'm doing well, I'm getting a lot of work done, going to continue to get it done, and And in the meantime, thanks for your concern and keep the faith. It's going to be okay.
President Joe Biden there. And Jade, the 8th hearing, 8 now, in investigating the attack on the US Capitol is set to resume. What are the sort of things we can expect?
Well, for weeks now, the committee has really been building up to this moment. It's holding another prime time hearing tonight, local time, and it will examine exactly what former President Donald Trump was doing for the 187 minutes between him finishing his speech near the White House to supporters on January 6, in which he urged them to fight like hell, and then eventually releasing a video telling the rioters to go home. The committee has already released some snippets of pre-recorded testimony showing former White House officials and aides describing Donald Trump as watching the attack unfold on TV from a private dining room at the White House. The main argument that the committee will be looking to make tonight is that the former president failed in his duty to call the attack off.
All right, thanks, Jade. Stay dry out there.
So yeah, staying dry. Again, we'll try to stay dry right here in Brisbane as well. But right now, from US, we go to Italy, where the Prime Minister has resigned.
Journalist Tobias Jones joins me out of Parma in Italy. Tobias, good to talk. You know, Draghi tried to submit his resignation last week, but he was asked to try again. Why has he lost support, do you think, at this point?
Well, he actually won the confidence vote. The trouble is that the centre-right and the far-right parties boycotted it, and he felt that his coalition was crumbling, and he's been forcing Italy to take some pretty bitter financial medicine, and he felt that if he didn't have the consensus of all the political spectrum, his patriotic measures would become politicised, so he's walked away.
Yeah, you know, he's won a lot of praise for how he has managed Italy's economic difficulties, and it is unusual to see a Prime Minister like this not want to necessarily hang on to power.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think he's been a bit premature, that he's in a bit of a huff. He failed to win election to become President of the Republic, which is the head of state, a few months ago, and people have told me that lack of solidarity amongst parliamentarians put its nose out of joint. The Five Star Movement, half of the Five Star Movement, because itself is a fracturing party, withdrew support last week, which precipitated this crisis. But the trouble is there was an election coming anyway soon, and I think the closer we got to that election, the more parties wanted to distance themselves from this bitter medicine that he's administering to the country, because, you know, the debt burden of Italy is huge. It's about 150% of GDP, the public debt. It's a country with famous protectionisms and cartels. He's been trying to free these up, and they're unpopular measures for all sorts of vested interests in the country. So politicians, as the election became closer, started to think maybe we should have a bit of distance between ourselves and this man. And he's said, no, I'm not going along with that. He's resigned.
Extraordinary. So let's talk about this possible power play, particularly that might see the far right emerge as quite a player.
Yeah, there's only one major party that's stayed out of this grand coalition, and that's the Brothers of Italy, ironically led by a woman, Giorgia Meloni, a neo-fascist party, proud of its support for Mussolini, although they sort of don't talk about that very much. Famously has been in the past anti-European, has been pro-Putin, as has another member of the far right, Matteo Salvini's Lega. He was famous.
So there you are, ladies and gentlemen. Right now we go to India, where the history in the making, and we have the first lady president from a tribal background, and congratulations to Srimati Draupadi Murmu. Here's that report.
Remember the struggle and hard work of Draupadi Murmu, not just the celebrations that we witnessed today. Importantly, with the voting that took place for presidential elections, there was also a surprise. Government sources are claiming that there was cross-voting by the opposition parties that were supposed to be voting for their presidential candidate Yashwant Sinha. I'm going to take you through one by one of how the cross-voting appears to have happened in the states. In the state of Assam, 22 at least have voted MLAs in favor of Draupadi Murmu. In Bihar, cross-voting by at least 6 members. In the state of Chhattisgarh, 6, while in the state of Goa, there were at least 4 who cross-voted in favor of Draupadi Murmu, unexpected even for the NDA. In the state of Gujarat, we are being told that there were at least 10 members of the Legislative Assembly who had voted in favor of Draupadi Murmu. Even in the state of Haryana, there was at least 1 cross-voting. In the hill state of Himachal Pradesh, again 1. In Jharkhand, a whopping 10 voted for Draupadi Murmu, while were expected to vote for Yashwant Sinha. Even in the state of Madhya Pradesh, there were 19 cross-voting for her. Even in the state of Maharashtra, which was among the top to be giving votes to Draupadi Murmu. In Meghalaya, it was 7. Even in the border state of Arunachal Pradesh, at least 1 cross-voted from another party, which means either the non-NDA or the opposition parties that were favouring Yashwant Sinha voted for Draupadi Murmu. So even beyond the expectations of the NDA, she got 64% votes. At least over 100 MLAs have cross-voted, according to the government, in favour of Draupadi Murmu, making it a sweeping victory for her as the 15th president. Draupadi Murmu is now elected as the first tribal woman president of the country. So clearly for the community that she comes from, specifically the Santhal tribal, but for the tribes across the country. This was a moment of celebration. But remember, once the celebrations die down, it will be a real test. For Draupadi Murmu, also about how she acts on issues that are of significance to the tribal life and culture and to a lot of marginalized groups among these communities. Here's a report about what Draupadi Murmu becoming the president means for the tribal groups.
History in the making. For the first time, an Adivasi will occupy the country's highest constitutional office. Draupadi Murmu is all set to take oath as the President of India. While the opposition dismisses Murmu's election as mere symbolism, it is still a big moment for the Adivasis who have largely found themselves on the margins of power structure. In many places, the tribal community celebrated Murmu's victory.
आज राष्ट्रपति जो है बनने वाला है वो आदिवासी है। ये आदिवासी का ड्रेस है, ये आदिवासी का ट्रेडिशनल नाच है। हम लोग खुशी से आज सुबह से नाच रहे हैं, वो उत्सव मना रहे हैं।
Murmu comes from Odisha's Santhal tribe. In India, the Santals are the third largest scheduled tribe groups after the Gonds and the Bhils. Murmu's win gives hope and inspiration for the tribal community of India.
छोटा सा परिवार से और इतना बड़ा गई है तो हम लोग बहुत खुश हैं।
हम लोगों का कास्ट में ना बोलते हैं माने महिला कुछ नहीं कर सकते हैं, इसीलिए आज प्रूव कर दिया सभी महिला सभी ही माने सभी कुछ कर सकते हैं।
According to the Constitution, the President of India is also the guardian of the 5th scheduled area. The President can declare any area with high tribal population as the 5th scheduled area. This gives the President the authority to inspect the administration of these areas. But the real test for Murmu will be how she acts on issues that are of importance to tribal life and culture. Expectations are high.
परेशानी है, रोड होना चाहिए, एक पुल होना चाहिए। अगर वो चीज हो जाएगा तो हम लोग जितना भी बारिश हो आने जाने के लिए।
प्रॉब्लम तो बहुत है, जैसे कि ट्राइबल में तो देखते हैं कि सब अभी निचले तकबे में ही हैं। अभी तक उनका कुछ थोड़ा थोड़ा उठ रहे हैं, ऐसा नहीं है कि नहीं उठे हैं, वैसा कोई बात नहीं है, वो उठ रहे हैं। और उनको यदि कुछ सपोर्ट मिलेगा तो और भी आगे जाएंगे।
वो तो हम जो सोचते हैं, जो प्रॉब्लम है यहाँ पर, वो प्रॉब्लम सुनिश्चित
होगा।
प्रॉब्लम क्या है?
प्रॉब्लम है रेलवे प्रॉब्लम।
रेलवे प्रॉब्लम, यहाँ पे स्टेशन नहीं है।
स्टेशन है किंतु कनेक्शन नहीं है।
Activists claim country's forest and land laws have changed over the years to help big industry, which will lead to further displacement of the original inhabitants of the land.
While I'm very happy that finally scheduled tribes have got representation, I'm not sure that she will really represent Adivasis in the way that they need to be represented, because all the BJP policies are anti-Adivasi.
Draupadi Murmu's election as president is truly a historic moment. But what she does as president will really shape her legacy. Bureau Report, India Today.
New Morning Fresh, clean and green. Powerful clean.
So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's a wonderful report there. And as we mentioned before, that it is a moment of pride for everyone. Right now, Australian Indian Radio promotion. Urdu Forum, together with the Sangeet Premi Club, offers a grand gala musical variety show. And you can win a free ticket to the event just by messaging Australian Indian Radio and mentioning this ad. And of course, that time is of the essence. Tickets are limited. Please call us now or send us a message on our Facebook page to win free tickets to the Urdu Forum and Sangeet Premi Club's Grand Gala Musical Night. Act now. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, the time is of the essence. There are limited tickets, so please, all you need to do is during the show or even after the show, whenever you watched our show, you can send us a message on our Facebook page and you will get the tickets. Well, right now, it's time to look at what's happening over the weekend, and there's lots that's happening. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have for you in this segment. Don't forget that tomorrow we are back at 10 a.m. with the weekend edition. Well, right now, as I mentioned before, it's about 14 degrees and cold and cloudy, rainy here in Brisbane. Well, it's been wonderful having your company and good to see you all as usual. We'll see you all back tomorrow. And don't forget to, go online and claim your tickets for the Urdu Forum by mentioning that you watched that ad and mention the time as well. So until tomorrow, it's goodbye from us.